Well, today is May 29th, or 529, the perfect day to discuss the importance of 529 college savings plans. These tax-advantaged accounts are tools that countless students rely on to fund their education.
Here to tell us more about 529 funds and the impact they can have on families is April Tardiff, a Portland-based senior wealth advisor at Merrill Lynch. Good morning, April. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Perfect timing to talk about this, right? So first off, for those who are not familiar with 529 plans, what exactly are they and how do they work?
So 529s are a program that allows you to save for college tax deferred. So the advantage of that is money you put in, similar to a 401k, grows for the purpose of college tax deferred, meaning any of the growth that you have on that account will not be taxed if used for education expenses.
And I think what's great about this too is that with 401ks and also HSAs, it brings down your gross income too for tax purposes, which is great.
Which is a great advantage right out of the gate, yes.
Who would be a good candidate for this type of plan? Who should be, signing up for these?
So the biggest thing is start young, start early, right? So what I speak to my clients about is when you leave the hospital, they give you a big kit right here in Maine, right? That says, start saving for college. Open that. I know you get home and you've got your baby and you've got a lot on your mind, but there are some grants available for starting young and starting early and being a Maine resident. So maybe take the opportunity to read that literature when you're nursing your baby at home. But the key is just start early. We always say to people, we've never had someone regret having too much money for college. It doesn't happen. So the point is you can't overinvest in these, right? You just got to start early and be disciplined about it. We tell people maybe start with $25 a month. Start with some small amount, and the power of that compounding is really incredible. You can always change the amount you're funding if things come up in life down the road where you have to maybe stop. But the most important thing is if you have a child, think about it. And some people say, well, what if my child doesn't go to college? I'm not a tax advisor, but what I can share is this money doesn't necessarily have to be for tuition like the old days. 529s are very flexible the way they're written, allowing parents to use that for private school, even summer camps that are education-based. It's tuition, it's room and board, it's supplies. Again, not a tax advisor, but what you need to understand is that there is some flexibility. In fact, if there's money left over in a 529, recent ruling has allowed that money to be converted to a Roth for the child. So just know out of the gate, yes, we don't know for sure that all children are going to go to college, but it's very flexible in what it can be used for. Vocational schools. So I would say everyone should start one if you have a child, and the more you can put in, the better.
How do you strategize to maximize the amount of money you want to get?
Good question. So we do have tools available as financial advisors where we can take the current rate, say University of Maine as an example. We know what their tuition is right now. We know what the average inflation rate is. So if you work with a financial advisor, they can tell you this is what you should put in when your child is newborn, or even if you're late to the game, let's say your child is 10 years old. We can run that education cost and give you an idea of what it takes to fund that college. Now again, you might get scholarships, you might have family members that want to support that education down the road, but I've never had someone say, I just had too much for college. So the point is anything you can do, this will compound and be invested and grow over time.
Are there any limitations with this that people should know about?
There are some high limitations in the six figures. If you were able to fund that out of the gate, you do get into the gift tax exemption. But for most people in Maine, most reasonable people, there aren't limitations that most people would be impacted by.
What about are there misconceptions about this at all? I mean, is each state different, and can I do a program that's not in Maine?
Yes, very good question. Yes. The way the tax code is written is 529 is just the section of a tax code, like 401k. And when it was created, every state had to have a 529. So Maine happens to have a really good one. You can use the Maine 529, and there are some grants and incentives to do so, but you don't have to. If you find another 529 in another state, you can use that one too. The point is, it doesn't matter where your kid goes to college. That state funding is just part of the legislation, but it doesn't impact the investments of that plan or where you live or where the kid goes to college. I would suggest using Maine's because there are grants associated with it, and it's a really great program, and we live here. But you don't have to be a resident to use it.
Why have a 529 day? You know, we don't necessarily have a 401k day.
Right. Why do you,
maybe we should. But why do you think there's, you know, just this effort, this push to spread awareness about this?
I think because there's so many misconceptions. People just believe, maybe my kid's not going to go to college, or I could never afford it. Or some parents come to me and just say, well, I'll deal with it when the time comes. And we want to get out of that misconception of, if you start young, save early. It's amazing. I'll give you an example. If you put $100 a month away, let's just say, for 20 years in some sort of tax-deferred investment earning approximately 8%. So there's some variables here. But let's say you're doing $100 a month for 20 years. If you just put that in like a savings account, let's say, and there's 0% interest, you've basically put in like $24,000. But by the power of compounding in a 529, and again, assuming those assumptions, you're maybe going to earn some 8% or so, that will be almost $70,000. Think of the difference, and that's $100 a month for 20 years. So the point is wouldn't that be powerful when your kid goes to college to have that money? Then you throw in the state grants available, which you can find on the FAME website, the free money that's coming to you from the state if you are a Maine resident and use this program. That power of compounding is hugely impactful. And the second thing to remember, I think, and why we want this day, is some parents say, well, what if my first son doesn't go to college? Well, here's the good news. You can transfer that to another child. And you can transfer it to a niece or nephew. There are very loose provisions around this because the government ultimately created this to give us flexibility. So I would say take the time, talk to a financial advisor, go to the FAME website, learn about it. And I think the big celebration today is if you really make this a priority and just set it and forget it and let it compound over time, you'll be glad that you did.
When can I start saving for this? I don't have to wait till I have a baby, right? Or get married or things like that, right?
Really great question.
Yeah.
You simply have to have a Social Security for the beneficiary. So some parents will create it for a niece or nephew, and then let's just say they have a child, they could change it to that child once that child is born and has a Social Security number. Because remember, with a 529, you're the parent, you're the owner of that account. Your spouse or partner might be the successor owner if something happens to you, but that's an account in your name for the benefit of that child. So you can change that beneficiary at any time, just like you can in a 401k.
All right.
So I'd say get started now.
Yeah.
Get started early.
And if we want to get started, remind everyone of that website where they can learn more.
Yes, the website in Maine is NextGen for Me, which stands for Maine, NextGen, standing for Next Generation for Me.com. It's a Maine-sponsored website, and there's some powerful grants on there. So I would highly encourage people to visit that website, check out the free money available. I recently had a daughter, and I know that the grants that I got were almost totaled $1,800 in free money for setting this up and being disciplined about monthly contribution.
Yeah.
So that's powerful, right?
Great information.
We love free money. All right. April, thank you so much for your time and expertise. We appreciate it.
Thank you.